This is Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella, and we're joined by our chief Washington correspondent and New York Times bestselling author, Ronald Kessler. His 18th book is out now, and it's called In the President's Secret Service, and it details some very revealing incidents that cut to the core of the characters of every president from Kennedy to Obama. The information comes from over 100 current and former Secret Service agents Mr. Kessler interviewed. First of all, congratulations on your new book, Ron.
Thank you, Ashley, and thanks for having me on.
First question that comes to mind is this. Aren't members of the Secret Service sworn to secrecy? And if so, how did you manage to get them to talk to you?
A little sodium pentothal goes a long way. You're right. The understanding is you never talk about what you see behind the scenes. I'd been gathering string on this for some years. I'd been introduced originally by an FBI agent to a Secret Service agent. That's how I got my first little window on this. And so I've been gathering string, and more recently, some agents came to me and said that the Secret Service has been cutting corners to a dangerous degree, endangering the president and the vice president, and that gave me another opening to talk to current agents. So I was able to both write about the Secret Service and what they do, and the corner cutting and laxness, as well as what they see behind the scenes, as you say, revealing the character of the presidents, first families, and vice presidents.
So the agents talking to you is no breach of any kind of oath or protocol or anything?
Oh, it is a breach, and they're not supposed to talk about what they see, but you know, I use my little magic tricks, and they were able to tell me the stories and cooperate, and you know, they range from how George Bush's motorcade, George Bush the First, number 41, was diverted based on a psychic's vision that he was going to be assassinated, to the fact that Barack Obama secretly does smoke behind the scenes to the same degree as he always did, despite his denials.
You say threats against Obama are up 400% compared to those against his predecessor, George Bush. Now, is the Secret Service taking these threats very seriously, or do they think maybe they're empty threats coming from some wackos?
Well, many of them are from wackos, but you can't always tell. And so the Secret Service does take each one seriously, does go and interview each person, and then categorizes them according to level of threat. Category 3 is the most serious, where it's believed that they really are serious, that they also have the capability of doing it, that they're not, for example, in prison or in a mental hospital, and perhaps they have some training in weapons. If the president is going to that person's hometown, the Secret Service will actually basically sit on those people and come there the night before and say, you know, you better not go out. We don't want you near the president. They'll be followed. Whereas the least serious is where someone just says in a bar, you know, I think, you know, I'd like to kill the president. In those cases, they probably will not be prosecuted, but you know, a visit by Secret Service agents can be pretty intimidating.
All right, on the character issues, starting with JFK, it was pretty well known that he was no monument to marital fidelity, but did the extent of his trysts that you learned from these agents, including repeated liaisons with Marilyn Monroe, surprise you at all?
I was not surprised, I have to say. You know, he was a serial person who engaged in sex, but there were quite a few news stories in the book about, for example, Fiddle and Faddle, who were two assistants in the White House, who would have threesomes with Kennedy. And I have on the record a Secret Service agent who said that the three of them would go in the White House pool. Fiddle and Faddle would be wearing white T-shirts with their nipples showing through and nothing else. And there was also Pamela Turner, who was Jackie's press secretary. She was having an affair with JFK. At the same time, JFK was very reckless. He didn't want Secret Service agents on the rear runners of his limousine in Dallas, and that really led to the successful assassination, because there was one shot, and at that point, if there had been agents on the rear runner of the limousine, they could have dove in and protected JFK from the subsequent shots that were in fact fatal. This is something the Secret Service has to deal with, this desire by presidents to be out there and greet the fans, and the desire of the Secret Service to keep that president safe. But in recent years, since Department of Homeland Security acquired the Secret Service itself has become very lax, cutting corners to the point where they will actually shut down magnetometer screening as an event is about to start and the staff pressures them and says there are still stragglers out there, let them in, and they'll do it. It's unbelievable. That's why Reagan was shot, because there was no magnetometer screening. And after that, the Secret Service started to do magnetometer screening, but yet now they're cutting corners to the point where in the case of Joe Biden, when he threw the first pitch at the Orioles game in April in Baltimore, they actually had no magnetometer screening. So anybody or any terrorist could walk in there with guns or grenades, go after the president, and we would have an assassination.
Considering the extent of JFK's philandering, why do you think the White House press corps virtually ignored it?
In those days, the White House press corps, and in fact the press corps in general, ignored sexual activities of presidents. It just was not considered polite to write about that. There's always this herd instinct in the press where if one person goes against the crowd, he's sort of ostracized. In fact, I would say that about the attitude towards George Bush. If someone in the press started writing something nice about George Bush, the rest of the press would think he's weird.
All right, you also learned that the man who became president after Kennedy's assassination, LBJ, was not only an extensive adulterer himself, but also somewhat of a miscreant. Could you talk about that a bit, please?
He was just out of control. First of all, he was drunk quite a bit. He would have stables of women, secretaries, and others that he would have sex with. One time, Lady Bird actually caught him having sex in the Oval Office. He got mad at the Secret Service for allowing her in, and after that insisted on an alarm system so that he would be warned if Lady Bird was in the vicinity. He would urinate in front of reporters at the ranch, including female reporters. He would spend hours in his cabin in the Air Force One with these secretaries. He was just, simply out of control. As one Secret Service agent said, if he weren't president, he would be in a mental hospital, because that's how crazy he was.
And he made a comment once about his admirers, supposedly, right? Wishing him well as he left, as he got on Air Force One.
Oh yeah. As he got on Air Force One in Texas, there was a big crowd of fans outside cheering him on. And as he got in the Air Force One, he said, "Screw them! I piss on all of them." This is the way he really thought about people. And when he would get in Air Force One, he would immediately strip off all his clothes, so he was naked, in front of secretaries, in front of his daughters, in front of Lady Bird. I mean, literally, if you met someone like this doing something like this, you would probably call the police and say he should be in a mental hospital. And yet here he was, President of the United States, presiding over the Vietnam War.
You mentioned that of all the presidents you interviewed the agents about, Jimmy Carter was the one disliked the most. Why was Jimmy Carter the most disliked?
Jimmy Carter would put on this air of being the good old boy, peanut farmer with a big smile. Behind the scenes, he never smiled. He was nasty. He told the Secret Service uniform division that he didn't want them to say hello to him in the morning on his way to the Oval Office. It was just too much bother to say hello to another human being.
All right, let's turn to a president cut of a much different cloth, Ronald Reagan. What did they say about Ronald Reagan?
Reagan was, just the genuine article that you saw on TV. He was extremely considerate. He would always, when he went in Air Force One, go in the cockpit, say hello to the captain, say goodbye to the captain, whereas Jimmy Carter almost never did that. He would ask the detail leader if he could come and watch TV with the agents, and he would schmooze with them and tell them stories. Another Reagan story is when it came out that Gary Hart was having an affair with Donna Rice, one of Reagan's aides came to tell him as he was about to get in the elevator at the White House, and he said, "This is going to be the New York Times tomorrow. Reagan said, well, boys will be boys. He got in the elevator with the Secret Service agent, and as they were getting out, he said to the agent, but boys will not be president.
Something many of us did not know but are not terribly surprised to hear, considering Reagan's superb character, involves Reagan quietly giving his own money to people who had fallen on hard times.
Reagan would just routinely write checks for as much as $5,000, which of course is much more today, when people would write in with hard luck stories. And it was all done very quietly. He never talked about it. And he would also have Air Force One fly out to pick up people who needed to get hospital treatment.
You say George H.W. Bush, Bush 41, was the favorite of the Secret Service. Why?
He was, very considerate to the Secret Service. He would joke around. They would play pranks on each other. Bush 41 would sort of complain that he doesn't want this big motorcade. They all would complain about that. And one day he said, why can't I just walk to the Corcoran, which was just a few blocks away? So the next time the Secret Service took this jalopy that was owned by one of the Secret Service technical people that was full of cigarette smoke and almost out of the 40s, put the presidential seals on it, the American flag, and the next time Bush came out of the White House to go in the motorcade, there was this jalopy waiting for him. It was just a joke, and Bush actually did get in, but then they drove to the gate and then they got in the presidential limousine. One of the more fascinating stories about Bush 41 is that a psychic actually said that he was going to be assassinated when he came to Enid, Oklahoma, and the Secret Service actually listened to that. And it sounds crazy, but if you actually read the details, which are quite involved, you can see why. Because this psychic had the vision that he was going to be assassinated by a sniper. The Secret Service interviewed her and asked her, do you know where the limousines are? She said, yeah, they're at this Air Force base outside of town. Most people wouldn't even know that the limousine was shipped in beforehand. And they said, well, can you take us there? She did. She pointed out which hangar the limousine was in. She said this other hangar has other components related to the visit, which turned out to be true, Marine One. And then she said that Bush would be coming out in a sport jacket out of Air Force One, and he would be sitting on the left side of the limousine. Well, normally, of course, he'd be in a suit. Normally, he'd sit on the right side. But it turned out that that was true. So at that point, the Secret Service said, we have to change the motorcade route. They took a different route that did not go under an overpass, which is what she said, where the sniper would be. And Bush was never told about this story. He'll be reading about it for the first time in this book.
All right, name of the book, In the President's Secret Service. It's very interesting, easy to read, and you're guaranteed to learn a lot you did not know. We wholeheartedly recommend it and wish you the best of luck with it, Ron.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
And thank you for being with us at Newsmax TV.
Homeland Security advises every family to have an emergency radio. It's essential for severe weather, power failures, even terrorism. Now Newsmax is offering you an emergency radio absolutely free. Just pay shipping and get the radio, plus a free trial subscription to Newsmax magazine. Go online to Newsmax.com to check out the details of this great offer. Get your free emergency radio today. Just call 800-NEWSMAX. Make sure your family is protected. Call now, 800-NEWSMAX.